When a single verse of truth enters the mind, it does not arrive as a stranger. It comes as something we have long been waiting for, though perhaps we did not know it. The human soul is not healed by argument alone, nor by the noise of the world's remedies. What heals us is a word that carries both weight and light, something that reaches beneath our reason and touches the deeper chambers of the heart. I did not stumble upon this verse as one stumbles into a distraction. I received it as one receives medicine after a long illness. It was not simply a sentence written on paper. It was a voice that cut through confusion, a whisper that carried clarity, and a truth that set my restless thoughts at rest. Truth does not arrive with trumpets or grand displays. It comes softly, often so gently that we almost miss it. The mind, restless and cluttered with questions, doubts, and worries, expects solutions to burst through like thunder, but truth is rarely that way. It enters like a seed, so small we might overlook it, yet it carries within it the power to grow into something vast. When truth finds its way into the soul, it does not shout, it whispers. It does not demand, it invites. And when we allow it in, though it begins quietly, its effects are nothing less than complete transformation. The world teaches us to expect change through force, through strategies, through the weight of willpower. But real change, the kind that brings healing to a broken mind or peace to a restless heart, comes from something far beyond ourselves. It is like the first light of dawn creeping into a dark room. At first, the light is hardly noticeable, only a suggestion that morning is near. But slowly the darkness recedes, and before long the entire room is filled with light. The truth works the same way. It doesn't overthrow our fears in one dramatic battle. Instead, it seeps into the cracks of our confusion, and little by little, it drives out what was once overwhelming. This is why one verse can heal when countless arguments cannot. Reason has its place, and logic can guide us, but the soul longs for something deeper. A truth spoken at the right time, in the right way, reaches us not only in thought, but in spirit. It stills the storm of questions and awakens something stronger than doubt. When it enters, it reshapes how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and even how we see God. What makes this transformation so complete is not the size of the truth, but its nature. A single flame, though small, can chase away the darkness in an entire room. In the same way, when truth takes root in us, it spreads quietly yet thoroughly, until the places that once held despair are filled with hope, and the voices that once fed fear are silenced by clarity. We may not even realize the change as it is happening, but over time we notice that our mind is calmer, our heart steadier, and our perspective clearer. The beauty of this process is that we cannot force it. We cannot manufacture the effect of truth by sheer effort. It must be received, not seized. It is grace that allows it to enter, and humility that makes space for it to grow. When we finally stop striving for answers in our own strength, the quiet voice of truth finds us ready. And once it enters, it does not leave us as it found us. It shapes us, heals us, and renews us in ways we could never achieve on our own. This is the quiet power of truth. It slips into the soul unnoticed, but its transformation is unmistakable. ChatGPT said, "There are moments in life when no amount of reasoning brings peace. You can circle the same questions for years, searching for answers, dissecting your pain, and analyzing every possible explanation, yet the mind remains restless. Human reasoning is a powerful tool, but it often reaches its limits when it comes to matters of the heart. You can know all the facts, recall every argument, and still feel empty. This is because the mind alone cannot carry the weight of what the soul is crying for. In those moments, a single verse, a line of timeless truth, can succeed where years of logic and argument have failed. Why is this so? Because reasoning speaks only to the intellect, while truth touches something deeper. It is not just about understanding, it is about being understood. A verse does not merely inform, it comforts, corrects, and heals. It reaches into the hidden chambers of the heart that reason cannot unlock. When spoken or remembered in the right moment, a verse pierces through the fog of confusion and lands with the clarity of a gentle command. Be still. It does not need to explain everything, because its power does not come from explanation, but from revelation. Think of it like water to a thirsty traveler. A long discussion about the properties of water will never satisfy thirst, no matter how brilliant the explanation. But one sip, just one sip, can revive strength and restore hope. In the same way, reasoning about life's problems can exhaust us further, but a verse carries life itself. It feeds the part of us that logic cannot reach. That is why, after all the hours of thinking, one moment of hearing or remembering a verse can bring the release we longed for. There is also humility in the way a verse works. Reasoning often keeps us in control. We demand proofs, weigh arguments, and decide for ourselves. But a verse bypasses pride. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply speaks truth as it is. Its simplicity disarms us. We realize that all our striving, all our endless search for intellectual mastery, cannot provide what a single sentence of truth provides in an instant. It humbles the mind while lifting the spirit. When this happens, the failure of reasoning is not wasted. The years of questions and wrestling have prepared the soil of the soul, making it ready for the seed of truth to take root. And when that seed arrives in the form of a verse, it finds ground softened by struggle. Suddenly, clarity replaces confusion, not because we solved everything, but because we received something greater than an answer. We received peace. That is the miracle of truth in its simplest form. It doesn't need volumes of explanation or endless debates. One verse is enough to shift the heart, silence fear, and guide the mind toward rest. What reason cannot do in years, a single verse can accomplish in a moment, because it carries not just words, but the breath of life itself. Healing often feels out of reach because we approach it the wrong way. We strive to fix ourselves with sheer determination, convincing ourselves that strength means never bending, never admitting weakness, never asking for help. Pride whispers that we should be enough, that we should carry every burden alone, that to fall is failure. And so we push harder, exhausting our minds and wounding our souls in the process. Yet healing does not come through pride. It begins in the opposite posture, through surrender. When we lay down the need to appear strong, when we admit our limitations, and when we open ourselves to receive grace, we finally step onto the path of true restoration. Pride builds walls. It isolates us not only from others, but from God and even from ourselves. We pretend to be whole, yet the cracks grow deeper. The act of surrendering pride is not weakness, it is honesty. It is the courage to say, I cannot do this alone. That admission is often the first crack in the wall, and through that crack, light enters. Grace does not force its way in, it waits for an open heart. And when it enters, it brings the kind of healing that striving could never accomplish. Grace is not something we can earn. That is why pride resists it so fiercely. Pride insists that everything must be deserved, that love must be repaid, that peace must be earned through effort. But grace breaks that pattern. It gives freely what we cannot achieve on our own. It meets us in our weakness and fills the gaps that strength could never bridge. Healing begins here because the soul no longer has to perform. It can finally rest. Think of a wounded hand clenched tightly in a fist. Pride keeps it closed, unwilling to reveal the injury, unwilling to accept help. But a clenched fist cannot be bandaged, cannot be healed. Only when it opens, vulnerable, exposed, can it receive the care it needs. The same is true for the heart. Healing does not come to the proud, closed spirit. It comes to the one willing to open, to surrender, to be touched by grace. This surrender does not erase our pain in an instant. It transforms the way we carry it. Where pride leaves us crushed beneath our burdens, grace shares the weight. Where pride demands perfection, grace accepts us as we are, and in that acceptance we begin to mend. Healing is not about erasing scars, but about discovering that scars no longer define us, because grace has written a greater story over our wounds. The beauty of this truth is simple. Healing is not something we accomplish, it is something we allow. We do not earn it through prideful striving, we receive it when we let go. It is in surrender that freedom is found, and it is through grace that the soul is restored. Healing begins not when we prove our strength, but when we admit our weakness and allow grace to do what pride never could. Darkness often convinces us that it has the final word. When life feels heavy, when confusion clouds the mind, when pain settles deep in the soul, it seems as though light has vanished completely. We begin to believe that hope has run out, that joy is lost, that peace will never return. Yet the truth is far different. Light is never absent. Even in the darkest night, it is still there, steady, quiet, and unyielding. The problem is not the absence of light, but the condition of our eyes. Too often, we are blinded by fear, by despair, by pride, or by distraction. Healing begins when we learn to see again, to look beyond the shadows, and to notice the light that has been with us all along. Think of the sky at night. To the hurried eye, it appears empty, but if you pause and look carefully, stars begin to appear. They were never absent. We simply were not still enough to notice them. The same is true of light in our lives. When the noise of our struggles keeps us distracted, we miss the small but steady signs of grace, kindness, and truth that surround us. Yet once we choose to open our eyes and quiet our hearts, we find that light has always been near, guiding us, waiting for us to see. Light does not always come in dramatic flashes. More often it reveals itself in simple, ordinary ways. A word spoken at the right time, a verse remembered when we needed it most, a moment of kindness from a stranger, or even the strength to endure one more day. These small rays of light are proof that we are not abandoned. They remind us that no matter how deep the valley, there is always something brighter breaking through. The issue is not whether light exists, but whether we are willing to notice it. Choosing to see the light is an act of faith. It requires us to look past our immediate pain and trust that goodness is still present, even if it feels hidden. It means refusing to let darkness define our perspective. It means training our eyes to see not only what is wrong, but also what is right. This shift does not make the darkness disappear, but it keeps us from being consumed by it. For once the eye is set on the light, even the smallest spark can guide us forward. The promise of light is that it cannot be overcome. Darkness may cover for a time, but it can never destroy. The sun always rises even after the longest night, and in the same way, truth, hope, and love continue to shine, even when life convinces us otherwise. Our task is not to create the light, but to recognize it. Healing and peace come when we open our eyes, lift our gaze, and remember this simple but profound reality. The light has never left us, and it never will.